What happens when a Steve Jobs wannabe ventures into the fashion world? You get Dov Charney. In 2014, different websites carried the sad news about Dov Charney, the charismatic CEO of American Apparel, who found himself down to his last $100,000. Not long before, back in 2007, Charney's stake in the company had soared to an estimated $458.2 million. He was the golden boy of American fashion, hobnobbing with hedge fund titans who financed his ventures, posing alongside adult film stars for publicity shoots, and making waves with his daring advertising campaigns that featured everyday women in provocative settings. But how did Charney, once the poster child of hipster chic, plummet from $500 million to near destitution, relying on the kindness of friends for shelter? Let's dig into the story. On January 18, 2014, Charney, renowned as one of retail's most controversial figures, was ousted from his own company. Founded by Charney himself in 1998, American Apparel had grown to operate 249 stores across 20 countries, employing approximately 10,000 people. That fateful morning, buoyed by a record revenue of $634 million, Charney was in high spirits. He eagerly planned to brief the board on resolving significant issues at a key distribution center that had hampered the company's operations for months, hurting sales and driving up costs. But what Charney didn't know was that this morning would be the last time he would ever be called CEO. Arriving with a new running shoe design in hand, Charney kicked off the meeting with enthusiasm. He proudly displayed about 6 of the shoes on the table, ready to pitch his new line of sneakers. Before he could delve into his presentation, Alan Mayer, the board chairman, interrupted him. Mayer pushed the shoes aside and said, "Look, there's something else we want to talk about." He slid a couple of pieces of paper across the table to Charney. It was a termination letter. The board had decided to fire Dov Charney, the very founder and CEO who had led American Apparel for 25 years. The memo, which would later surface in court, listed a long string of allegations against Charney. Among them were claims that he allowed an employee to post nude photos of a former female employee who had sued him. It also had several accusations of misusing company funds. But it didn't stop there. Charney was known for handing out generous severance packages to employees who had been victims of his inappropriate behavior or sexual misconduct, effectively buying their silence. The letter detailed how Charney's actions had repeatedly put the company at risk of lawsuits from employees over issues like sexual harassment, discrimination, and assault. Additionally, it was revealed that Charney's family members had enjoyed lavish trips funded by the company, further highlighting the misuse of corporate resources. Later that evening, the board of directors at American Apparel released a statement announcing their decision to oust Charney, citing an investigation into alleged misconduct. Alan Mayer, one of the co-chairmen appointed to replace Charney, clarified the decision, stating, "We take no joy in this, but the board felt it was the right thing to do." Charney, who was born and raised in Montreal, had been embroiled in multiple lawsuits alleging inappropriate sexual conduct with female employees. In his own statement, Charney claimed there was a conspiracy to remove him, using past allegations as a pretext. "The board asked me to voluntarily step down as CEO and relinquish control over my 27% ownership stake in the company, or be forcibly removed," Charney said in a January 2020 email to CNBC. Using old, discredited allegations they knew were false as cover to terminate me, they embarked on a well-financed media campaign to discredit me and my track record as a successful executive and entrepreneur. Court filings from Charney's attorneys alleged that the CFO of American Apparel at the time, John Luttrell, who later became the interim CEO, had orchestrated the plan to oust him and convinced him to sign a disastrous settlement. This settlement left Charney jobless and without control of the company, despite being the largest shareholder. Charney argued that the investigation was biased, conducted by those who stood to gain from his removal. He emphasized that he had never been charged with any crime or found guilty or liable for any of the accusations against him. Under Charney's leadership, American Apparel was known for its simple yet provocative ads. Rarely using professional models, Charney often personally selected individuals from local hangouts and stores. He shot many of the advertisements himself, facing criticism for featuring models in sexually suggestive poses. Despite his efforts and several legal battles, Charney couldn't reclaim control of American Apparel, the company he had built from the ground up. The fight was bitter, involving lawsuits, worker demonstrations protesting the new management, and even allegations of death threats. Charney remained a polarizing figure. Some viewed him as a progressive visionary who paid fair wages and demonstrated that textile jobs didn't need to be outsourced to be profitable. Others saw him as an egomaniac who engaged in inappropriate relationships with much younger staffers and whose reckless behavior ultimately destroyed the business. Sidney Finkelstein, a professor at Dartmouth's Tuck School of Business, who had studied CEO transitions, notes that it's not unusual for a board to oust a company founder. However, when a founder wields significant power, either as the face of the brand or as a long-tenured CEO, such oustings are rarer. It's true that very powerful CEOs will hold on longer, he says. This was certainly the case for Charney. Despite his dramatic fall, he seemed determined to bounce back. Just a few days after his sacking, Dov Charney vowed to return. In an interview with Vice News about his new venture, Charney said, "My previous company had an effect on the culture of young adults. I want to reconnect and do that again before I die." Charney didn't stay down for long. He went on to start a new company called Los Angeles Apparel, which manufactures its products in the LA area. Much like American Apparel, Los Angeles Apparel buys fabric and yarn made in the U.S. and aims to become the leading player in U.S. clothing manufacturing, according to its website. The company openly acknowledges that its clothing and business model are similar to those of American Apparel. Los Angeles Apparel manufactures and distributes apparel to screen printers, apparel companies, and boutiques, focusing on t-shirts, sweatshirts, cotton bodysuits, and swimwear. Charney aims to fulfill orders ranging from 500 to 20,000 units, with each clothing item priced between $12 and $20. Charney wasn't alone in his new venture. Many loyal workers from American Apparel joined him. He left with key leaders from the company, including Jan Willem Hubner, the Director of Retail Standards, John Chung, the former Vice President of Product Development and Design, David Neisenbaum, the former Director of Manufacturing, Accounting, Analysis, and Audit, and Pat Honda, the former President of Wholesale. Rumor has it that Charney's new company had about 50 employees when it started. Meanwhile, American Apparel struggled without Charney at the helm, filing for bankruptcy in 2015 and again in 2016. However, Charney's new company, Los Angeles Apparel, thrived. By its second year, it had grown to over 350 employees. In an interview with Bloomberg, Charney drew comparisons to the early days of American Apparel, calling this growth the equivalent of year 8 at his previous company. He even predicted that Los Angeles Apparel would reach $20 million in revenue by 2018. In 2023, Charney's career took another significant turn when he was appointed by Kanye West as the CEO of Yeezy. Charney, a longtime friend and fabric supplier for West, had already been producing t-shirts and managing mass production for the new Yeezy line, which was recently unveiled at a low-key event. Despite the controversies that marred his past, Charney was never found guilty of sexual harassment in court. However, he openly admitted to having numerous relationships with young female employees. One former colleague mentioned that Charney, at 45, had relationships with 19-year-old sales associates. "I'm not going to be a victim of sex shame tactics," Charney said in a 2017 interview, where he described physical relationships with coworkers as unavoidable. Tell us what you think in the comments below, and don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe.